Earth.
Good morning, sir.
So, how are you doing?
Sir, I'm fine.
Okay. So, Earth, give your brief introduction to us.
Sir, my name is Arth Jain. I was born in Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh. In 2004, I shifted to New Delhi, from where I did my schooling through Sanskriti School. Post that, I did my BTech in Mechanical Engineering from IIT Delhi, and my hobbies include playing chess and engaging in debating.
Okay. So, you are done with your mechanical engineering.
Sir,
So, Earth, why you want to join civil services?
sir, I find civil services to be a very prestigious and meaningful career. And right from a young age, officers are given important responsibilities and opportunities to work in diverse sectors, sir.
Okay. So, when did you plan to go, when did you make your mind that you have to go to civil services?
Sir, somewhere around towards the end of second year in college.
Okay. So, while studying in engineering, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but Earth, don't you think nowadays people who are from IITs and any of good institutions, they like to go into some innovative things and all like entrepreneurship. Okay, so rather than like civil services. So, what actually has motivated you that you should join civil services?
So one is the reasons, as I stated above, the appeal of civil services itself, it being a prestigious and meaningful career. Second, when I compared it to other possibilities like a core mechanical job or research or entrepreneurship, I found that I would enjoy a diverse civil services job more than a specialized domain, sir.
So, are you looking it with your career perspective? Because it is services, right? So, there is a difference between service and a job or career something. Okay. So, usually people who want to serve to the society, they want to join civil services. So that's what I want to know the reason whether you are looking it for your career opportunity, because there will be a lot of challenges also while serving to people. Okay.
Sir, it's a combination of both. It is basically like the satisfaction of engaging in public service, along with being part of a service that is prestigious and that offers a structured career growth. So the reasons are both personal and professional.
Okay. So how do you observe a society around you?
Sir, in what context, if you
In
can clarify?
context of cultural, economical, so in all the context.
Sir, I think we are part of a very diverse society culturally. If we talk about India, we are home to different cultures, which translates into different cuisines,
I am
different
talking,
festivals.
sorry to interrupt. I'm talking around you, in vicinity of your area. Like, where do you stay? Like, in vicinity of that.
Sir, I stay in Gwalior. So in terms of Gwalior, I can say that society. So in contrast to, let's say, Delhi, where I have spent most of my life, in Gwalior, the society is laid back, it's calm and peaceful. We are in connect with the nature because there is a lot of greenery around. The air is cleaner. Unlike, say, Delhi, the interaction among neighbors or interaction with people in general is much more in the society. In terms of cultural practices, Gwalior is, let's say, famous for gajak as well as poha. So we have that when I talk about food. Also, sir, festivals are celebrated and society is religious overall, sir.
Okay. So, did you find any challenges in livelihood of people around you, or any issues with them? Suppose government has announced some schemes, some projects for them, for welfare of them, but they are not able to grab that. Okay. So, did you get a chance to find these things?
Sir, if I talk in general, I think in Madhya Pradesh, yes, schemes related to education or healthcare may not have permeated completely. Second, sir, schemes related to tribals, especially, they are not being completely accessed by the tribals themselves, and so they do remain isolated. Otherwise, sir, generally also, sir, when we see about government schemes, complete utilization of funds does not happen, and low awareness does tend to be there, especially in rural areas where information has not permeated completely, sir.
Did you get a chance to meet with any of the tribals in your area?
Sir, I could not, sir.
Could you please name some of the tribals staying in Madhya Pradesh?
Sir, Baigas, then Bharias, and then Saharias, then the Gond tribe, Bhils tribe.
So how did you get to know the problems associated with them? Just what you were explaining before this.
Sir, I'll agree that the knowledge is not based on any practical experience. Instead, it is based on what I have read, sir, through various newspaper articles and newspapers.
Okay, okay. So Earth, if you become a deputy collector, suppose in your area, okay. So what are the areas on which you would like to take your priority work, priority act?
So depending on where I am, the deputy collector, if I talk about Madhya Pradesh, then two of the priorities can be education and healthcare, because I feel that the social infrastructure remains weak in Madhya Pradesh. However, if I'm a deputy collector in, say, Delhi, then I would want something more like waste management and sanitation, because the problem of education and healthcare is not there so much. So it will depend a lot on area, sir, but generally it will be either education or health, or something like, say, general sanitation.
So what are the problems in education in your area?
Sir, one is the human resource issue, sir. Either the teacher student ratio is insufficient, or if it's sanctioned sufficiently, then teacher availability is a concern. Or if that's also not an issue, then the quality of teaching at times is problematic. Secondly, sir, the infrastructure. Either toilets are missing, or clean water is missing, or the desks and the classrooms have not been completely built. Third might be the dropout rate, sir. Both boys and girls are dropping out for different reasons, sir. And fourth could be the inclusion issues. At times there are caste barriers, gender barriers, or maybe tribals have cannot access education completely. So these are the four problems, sir.
Okay. So you mean to say that we have no schools in tribal areas?
So we do have some model residential schools under the Eklavya scheme, and we have Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas. But education as a whole has not permeated into tribal society, which is evident from the low literacy rates, sir.
So could you please name any other residential school other than Kasturba Gandhi?
So the Eklavya
Other
residential
than
schools,
that,
I am not aware, sir.
have you heard Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya?
Uh, yes, sir. I had forgotten about this.
What is the difference between Kasturba Gandhi and Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya?
Sir, I'm not sure, but I think it's one is for boys and the other is for girls.
Okay. So, okay, Earth, I asked you problem in education. I didn't ask you problem in governmental schools. Okay. So anyway, okay. So what do you think? Like, what are the steps should be taken to rectify like government education system in schools basically, in villages basically?
So based on the different problems I highlighted, different interventions would be needed. So in terms of teacher availability, the absenteeism and subcontracting would have to be stopped. This is an administrative measure. Secondly, as long as teachers are interested, the quality can always be improved by providing them access to open courses and various online videos that are now available. The next aspect is about infrastructure. Again, so this is an administrative issue where we can always get better quality toilets built, better quality classrooms constructed, and ensure that the desks and other textbook resources is available. Third, sir, addressing the dropout rate would mean that we have to identify why they are dropping out. Girls might be dropping out because there are safety issues. So this then becomes a policing issue and has to be addressed in a similar manner. or they might be dropping out because they want to work, or for whatever reason. In that case, community uh, engagement would be needed, or a community approach would be needed, so that we can convince them that students should stay in school. So a similar measure would be needed if we have to reduce the inclusivity aspects, the inclusivity barriers.
Okay, so there are a lot of like, parents, they do think that children are their helping hand. Okay, so if they will send children to school, so like, they will lose their earning. Okay, and that's what like, they are interested to keep their children working, specifically in monsoon season and all. Okay, in their fields. Okay, so how will you overcome this situation being an administrative officer?
So one is the legal aspect, and second is the social aspect. That in terms of legal aspect, it is illegal to make children work. So the violation of Child Labor Act, and appropriate action can be taken. However, my major focus would be on the social aspect. So talk to the parents and make them understand that education is crucial for their children. Once educated, children would be able to get better jobs, and in the future, they would provide a much higher, say, returns, or they would be able to get much higher salaries for the families, and they would be able to pull families out of poverty. The third is, sir, make it easy for them to be educated in terms of by providing certain incentives like free bus passes, free cycles, and free textbooks. Parents often think that why to spend so much on education. So if these barriers can be removed. Additionally, some financial incentives can be provided, say for girl children, sir.
But they will say that if we will send our children to school, so who is going to earn? Okay, so how we will run our daily cost, how we will like, have foods, meals and all. Okay, so forget about future, how to survive in the present, that's a big question. Okay, and that's what they like, they tell their children to work to help them. Okay, on daily work. Okay, and if you talk about legal issues, okay, so how will you identify that the issue is legal? Because no one is going to tell you that like, uh, I am working with my parents. Okay, children are not going to complaining, and so like legal, you cannot talk with legal terms. Okay, so how will you overcome this? Yet, mental or like, the social issues.
Sir, answering the first part of your question, I think basically it comes down to the financial feasibility of whether children can study in school or not. So, for example, the cost of education, if parents do not send their child to school, they would have to prepare food at home. So, in this case, MDMS becomes a very good reason to send child to school. Similar measures, if let's say everything can be provided free of cost, from the school bag to the textbooks to the bus passes, that again gives an incentive for parents to send their children to school. Additionally, if you can have scholarships and rewards for performing at a certain level, then parents would see it as an immediate goal of sending children to school, that they would actually see it as a source of earning rather than a some far-fetched dream uh, of job in the
So
future.
do
So
you,
this,
sorry to interrupt, do you support midday meal scheme?
sir, to that extent, definitely, sir. Not only it has broken caste barriers, it has actually increased the enrollment and decreased the dropout rates, sir.
Okay, but I'm going to highlight some issues in execution in this midday meal scheme. Okay, if you get a chance to visit to any of the schools in village, okay, you will find that like, once school bell rings, okay, the moment like school like curriculum starts, at the same time, cooking also gets started. Okay, meal cooking gets started. Okay, and like, all students, because cooking is getting done like nearby room or in front of them, so everybody is you can, imagine the things. Okay, because children are children. Okay, so they concentrate on like, what is being cooked today, what we are going to get today. Okay, and once cooking is done, and by the time like, lunchtime is there, and they start getting their meals. Okay, and after having meal, okay, they like distribute it here and there. Okay, they spread it here and there. Okay, and there are a lot of people, they start going washrooms also, and washroom also gets it becomes very dirty. It becomes very cleanness is not there at all. Okay, and as you told already, resource also not there properly. Okay, so if there is a no person who is going to clean, swipe the things and all. Okay, so ultimately teachers have to do that. Okay, so don't you think teachers are facing a lot of issues, and those teachers will not be able to concentrate on teaching? Okay, because of this, because if it is study, so let it be study. Okay, if you put it together, study plus meal, so maybe execution becomes very difficult. So what is your opinion on this?
So first, I would agree that. Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Yes. Sir, so first I would agree that MDMS as a scheme, it's not perfect. It has its own flaws. As you have correctly pointed out, that cooking can take side by side, which can distract students. Secondly, sir, teachers are overburdened with the responsibility of cooking. And third, there is always a staff crunch to clean up the utensils, as well as to clean up the place where cooking has taken place. But sir, we have to compare the certain disadvantages with the overall advantages. So if I say that MDMS is completely scrapped, then what will happen is students will stop coming. A lot of cooks as well as helpers might lose their jobs. And the certain positive aspects it has, that community feeding, which actually helps build bonds, that will also not happen. So while it has its imperfections, overall it has a lot of positive points which we cannot ignore. The solution instead is to work on those imperfections, like let's say cooking cooking at a particular common place in the village, say in the Anganwadi center instead of in the school premises. Secondly, sir, increasing the number of staff so that teachers are not overburdened, and streamlining of certain duties so that the teachers do not have to clean up, sir.
Okay, so even Anganwadi centers also having that cooking procedure. They also do cook for children. Are you aware of that?
Sir, yes, sir, briefly, sir.
Okay, so okay, okay, Earth. Okay, now let's talk about economy model of village. Okay, what do you think? What is the main source of finance or economy in rural area people?
Sir, it remains to be agriculture in most villages, sir.
Okay, so what are the problems you are observing in agriculture, or what are the challenges in fact?
Sir, in terms of agriculture sector, if I talk about the immediate farmer family, so farmer is under debt. He does not have insurance coverage. Secondly, sir, the youth is leaving agriculture. So this is what we say, aging of farmer is taking place. Third is the feminization of agriculture that is taking place, and machinery is not suited. Secondly, sir, about the land where he grows his crops. Not only is land degradation taking place, which is decreasing yield, but land fragmentation as land is passed down each generation. Third, sir, the logistics or the marketing of the produce. So there are various inefficiency. We do not have adequate warehousing and cold storage facilities. Farmers are often at the mercy of traders or buyers, and processing of agriculture produce remains low. So these are the broad problems associated with agriculture, sir.
Okay, so what is the most important, I would say, why agriculture is not going to improve rapidly, or why the challenges are always there since long time. Okay, so I personally believe this is because of youth are not participating in agriculture. Smart brains are not participating there. Suppose there is a farmer, so if you talk with that farmer, if that farmer is having one child, okay, so he will say that my child will be like an engineer, a doctor, or a civil servant, he he will not say that my child will do the same agricultural work that what I am doing. Okay, so this is the mentality what that farmer is putting into the child of him. Okay, and later on, like that child becomes like a smart brain. Okay, where like actual leadership he could have given to his dad's or father's like industry or father's agricultural work, but he is now into different segment. Okay, so overall the things is that I would say like drainage of smart brains from agriculture. Okay, so what do you think, Earth? Like, what is your opinion here?
So one is the reason why they are leaving is because agriculture may not be so remunerative for the farmers. Hence, they want their children to go away. Second is not just the remuneration, but the uncertainty aspect. It's dependent on monsoon, it's dependent on climate and weather. And this does not offer a very secure lifestyle. So because of these reasons, the youth is leaving. The second aspect is, sir, that what happens is now farmers are aging and we will have a food crisis if people do not continue to engage in agriculture. So we will have to retain these youth in agriculture, whether it is by providing them specific agricultural education through universities or through various schemes that makes them stay. But the broad essence of the issue would be that until and unless we make agriculture remunerative, the youth will simply not stay. So for that, different solutions that have been proposed is increase the technology adoption in agriculture. So space tech, that is use of drones; biotech, use of different crops and crop seeds; nanotech to decrease the uh, weeds and pests that are there. Second, marketing reform so that the farmer gets a larger share of produce. This will actually motivate the youth to come back. Third, increase the processing in agriculture, food processing. If it increases, again, farmers will get a larger share or a larger or a better remunerative price. So essentially, it will boil down to making it remunerative, and then the youth will stay back.
Okay, so Earth, is there anyone from your family who are into farming or agriculture? Maybe your relative or someone?
No, sir, there isn't.
No. Okay. Okay. So let's assume like one youth is there, someone is someone of relative to that person, like from the agriculture industry, and someone from like a civil servant, one relative. Okay, that youth is motivated towards like civil services, not the like agricultural industry. Okay, as far as you're talking the issue about remuneration. Okay, so see, if smart brain is there, they will be like taking the challenges ahead. They will start doing some innovation, they will start implementing some like new ideas, new techniques, and then like remuneration will increase. Okay, it is all about like how people are leading. Okay, people are like making money from garbage. Okay, so why not from agriculture? Okay, so my question is what should be like a solid idea, because of that like uh, like youth they take it farming as a like one of like growing segment, or like one of the sectors where like they can they internally or heartily they want to join that. Okay, they want to do something there. Okay, so what should be an idea, what steps should be taken so that people will start liking agricultural industry, and like people will start running behind that. Okay.
Sir, I would say, I would again say that comes down to how the youth perceives it. Whether I agree that when youth comes in with new ideas, new innovations, it will positively impact agriculture. But the barrier is at the first point, where the youth does not want to come because the youth does not sees it as profitable. So to make it profitable, maybe promote farmer producer organizations, produce processing increase technology adoption, uh, make it more predictable, the monsoon forecasting and all. When all of this happens, then agriculture will be seen as predictable as well as profitable.
Okay. So, okay, Earth. Okay. So coming to your hobby part. Okay. So you like to play chess.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you like to debate, doing debates, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what do you learn uh, by doing debates?
Sir, I think one is debating teaches us thinking skills as well as reasoning skills. That given any motion, how do we think of different arguments? And given arguments, how do we reason them with the help of facts, data, case studies, or figures? Secondly, sir, it teaches us good communication skills, that how in the simplest of the language we can communicate the most complex ideas that sound convincing enough. Third, sir, it improves our knowledge. When I debate about different topics, I'm bound to learn new facts presented by my opposing team, and this adds to my existing knowledge base. And fourth, sir, an important thing is that it helps improve one's listening skills, sir, because the one of the best ways to win a debate is by listening to your opponent.
Okay. So if I talk about priority, so which will you put at the top to be a good debater? So what should be the first criteria?
Sir, I would put listening skills to be the top criteria, sir.
So thank you very much, Earth, answering my questions. Okay, my queries. Okay. So I'd request to Ashish sir, so to put some questions to you. Okay, followed by Suman sir. So thank you, Earth. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good morning, Earth.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, so I see that you are interested in playing chess, right? So, have you heard of this gentleman named Nikhil Kamath?
Yes, sir, he was in a controversy because of an online cheating incident, sir.
So what was the cheating that he did, and that too on a legend of chess, Vishwanathan Anand? So, what was that nature of cheating?
Sir, it was a charity match where he used a chess engine to win the game, sir.
Okay, and otherwise, why is Nikhil Kamath famous?
Sir, he's the founder of Zerodha. It's a financial firm, sir.
So, what is the work that Zerodha Financial Fund does?
Sir, I'm not exactly sure, sir.
So they're basically into trading, right? They are trading platforms. So you see the traders are having a gala party. You see the Nifty shooting up. You see the Sensex really, on a very bullish trend. On the contrary, if you look at the economy, right, economy is technically facing recession for the first time in Indian economy. So how do you see that contradiction? What is the reason for this contradiction? That although on one hand the share market is really on a bullish front, that it is shooting up, however the economic production is declining.
Sir, as far as I understand, my reasoning would be that share market is based on expectations of the future. And the future seems bright because we have predicted a V-shaped recovery, that as the pandemic curve starts, the curve starts flattening and recovery starts taking place, then a lot of industrial production will ramp up. And since the recovery will take place, hence people are already expecting the future to be bright, sir, in the economic sense.
So do you see economic recovery in real terms after the pandemic gets, like, at least it gets subdued, if not over?
Sir, I would say that as the pandemic starts getting subdued, a lot of opening up will take place, and a lot of sectors that have suffered, uh, they will definitely benefit. For example, the hospitality sector, the aviation sector, as well as say the restaurants and hotels. So sectors like these will see a lot of uptick. Secondly, sir, manufacturing activity will increase, and the labor will start coming back. Right now, a lot of labor had gone back. This will again increase the production. Third is, sir, the logistic supply chain, or whatever barriers had been there because of the various lockdowns. As those will start coming down, the supply chains will smoothen again, both at the domestic as well as the international level. So all in all, sir, I see a bright economic situation in the future, sir.
Correct. So what you said, I would like to discuss 2 points. You said that supply chain management is expected to improve. However, the data shows that supply chain management has rather improved during the pandemic because all the business was based on the supply chain management. So you see the logistics company doing very well. They expanding their base during the pandemic because all the business was catered to the doorstep. So your view, okay, fine. So that is an observation. But the apprehension is that, okay, if I ask you what has been the stance of monetary policy since the pandemic times, has it been accommodative? Has it been, contractionary? What has been the stance of the monetary policy?
Sir, I'm unable to recollect, sir, the exact stand.
Okay. So which rate is the policy rate which is determined by the Reserve Bank of India?
Sir, it's the repo rate.
So has the repo rate been increased or decreased over the past 1 year?
So that is what I'm unable to recollect. I think it has decreased or remained constant. That is the criticism, that we are worrying a lot about fiscal deficit when instead we should be worrying about economic recovery, from what I've heard, sir.
Okay. So Supreme Court offered a lot of moratorium. In fact, central banks first offered the moratorium on loans, and the Supreme Court order further constrained the banks from effecting recovery from the firms. So there is a lot of buildup of bad loans in bank, which is expected to again crop up after the pandemic gets over, because this support, this liquidity support by the central bank or the lenient view by the Supreme Court will not be taken once the pandemic gets subdued. So basically, the experts, some of the experts believe that the worst economic situation is yet to come, right? When the support gets withdrawn. What is your take on it? So that is what the point is when you say that after the pandemic time, the economy might make a V-shaped recovery, but some of the people are, apprehending that probably the economy will further slide down.
Sir, my view would be that as you pointed out, it may not be a V-shaped recovery. Then, as some experts have said, it might instead be a W-shaped recovery, that we have a slight fall and then we rise again. Sir, about the issue of loans, this was pointed out in the case of 2008 crisis, the regulatory forbearance issue, that you make it easier in times of crisis, all the liquidity pump as well as the lending. However, if you gradually taper it off once the crisis starts to fade away. So I think maybe that is something they might do this time also, that instead of just taking it away suddenly one day, they will slowly taper it off until the situation returns to normal. About the liquidity, sir, that is true, that about rupees 8 lakh crores was pumped in over the course of last 1 year by RBI, but a lot of it is lying with banks, and that will definitely cause some problem because the liquidity uptake has been very low.
Yeah, that is obvious because the economic production is not shooting up.
Yes, sir.
Until you don't have, there are no takers of loan rather than saying that it is lying with banks. Okay. Moving apart from economy, debater. Just for the sake of argument, we'll choose a topic and try to debate. You see all the institutions making tremendous improvement since independence, be it the banking sector, be it the postal sector, be it the insurance sector, they all have made tremendous improvement. But policing is one sector which has not made significant improvements till now. Okay, so that is my viewpoint. You have to counter my viewpoint. Only for the sake of argument, you have to argue that policing has improved in India. Your view on it, please.
So first, so since I'm going in the opposition, while I would accept that the growth in police has been less, but at the same time, I would want to point out that police has seen massive changes. Unfortunately, why these changes don't get observed is the reason that it is the negative which tends to be highlighted more. So a lot of policemen who are working very professionally and very silently, they may never come under the media limelight. The media would instead want to pick on those who are engaged in any misuse of power or any activities related to corruption, which is why I would say, one, that it is more of a perception issue rather than an actual issue. Second, sir, structural reforms have taken place. That, for instance, accountability mechanisms have been set. In 2006, directives were given under Prakash Singh case, and the complaints authority and establishment boards have been set up in various states. Third, sir, the use of technology has massively increased. So, for example, now you have helplines, you have social media platforms being used by the police. That certain state polices, they are very active on Twitter, so you can file complaints there. Then, sir, the institutional reforms have been taken place as per the various recommendations. So, all in all, I would say that the growth has taken place. May not be as commensurate with other sectors, but it's there, sir.
Okay, so now the debate is over. Just to view, what is the status of police reforms? As you pointed out, the Prakash Singh and NK Singh versus Union of India case. So what is the status of implementation of police reforms? The guidelines came in 2006. We are almost 15 years past that. Has the police reforms been implemented in totality?
So there are two aspects to this which are usually pointed out by retired police officials. One is that in certain states, the reforms have not been implemented. So the fixed tenure to SP, the 2-year tenure, or the establishment of complaints board and complaints authority, as well as the police establishment board, that has simply not taken. Certain states have not set up the state security commissions. This is the first aspect. Second is, in states that have actually implemented the police complaints authority or police establishment board, the independence has come into question. Some retired police officers, they say that while in theory the board exists, still the political interference is so much that the essence of it is lost, sir.
Okay, there was one point in the police reforms which asked for this specialization of police, that is bifurcating the investigating agency and the law and order function. Any state which has implemented that?
Sir, I'm not sure.
Okay, my last question. Recently, there was, just a couple of days back, there was a news in northeastern India that 2 states, Assam and Mizoram, came at loggerheads. So have you heard that news? What was the reason for the 2-state machinery to come in conflict with each other?
So the conflict is based on historical reasons. The border demarcation, essentially, the border demarcation was done by 2 different notifications. One is the 1875 notification, which is accepted by Mizoram, and other is the 1933 notification, which is not accepted by Mizoram but accepted by Assam. And naturally, because these 2 notifications are not consistent within themselves, so these have led to clashes in the past. I think there was clashes in 2020 as well as in 18, and now there were recently clashes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Earth. Over to Sumant.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Earth. Am I audible?
Good morning, sir. So you are audible.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk a little bit about the international relations and dynamics currently in question. So are you aware that the US is exiting Afghanistan?
Yes, sir. It's exiting Afghanistan after almost 19 years, sir.
Okay. So what was the reason US had entered Afghanistan in the first place?
So US entered Afghanistan in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks, sir.
So
A
what?
war on terror, basically, sir.
Okay. So do you think they have won the war on terror?
Sir, as far as I understand, they have definitely not won the war on terror. The reasons are, one, that when they entered, they did subdue Taliban to a certain extent, but Taliban retreated, it regrouped, and now it has emerged stronger than ever. Right now, Taliban has taken majority of Afghanistan under its control. Secondly, sir, US faced a lot of casualties and it has no objective gains to show for it. The government which it set up is often called a puppet government, and now it's losing its popularity. So, sir, I would say that, in fact, not only me, a lot of experts would say that it has failed on its war of terror. But few successes have been that Osama bin Laden was taken down. So,
okay, but then Osama bin Laden was taken down in 2011, right?
yes, sir.
So if, let's say, the US, as you said, has not won the war on terror, any specific reason do you think why the US is exiting? Because clearly, do you think there is a dearth or shortage of resources or military competencies as far as US is concerned?
Sir, my opinion is that while there is no shortage, not my opinion actually, my understanding is that US does not have shortage of resources or military power for that matter, but they are driven by domestic compulsions. The war on terror has been extremely expensive, and that has become a domestic political issue in the last 3 elections in US.
Okay, so let us talk a little bit about Taliban. Okay, I find this issue intriguing. So, was the Taliban existent, like, since the dawn of time, or what led to the rise of Taliban in the first place?
Sir, interestingly, it's the United States which in a way created Taliban, because in 1979 there was a Soviet-Afghanistan war in which there was a pro-Soviet government in Afghanistan, and the USA wanted to take it down. It was during this Cold War, so they started supporting the Mujahideen. As it progressed, the Mujahideen had its own internal rivalries, and it finally split into Taliban and the Northern Alliance. So I would say that it was in a way, an indirect creation of USA itself.
So, was fighting Taliban, or the agenda of US in the first place? Can we say it?
Sir, before 2001, it was not the agenda of United States. In fact, as I just said, in 1979, it was actually supporting the different groups. Towards 1990s, it was neutral. It had no immediate aim to take against Taliban. But it was the 9/11 was the turning point when it decided to face Taliban and to declare a war on terror.
So, where does Pakistan come into this picture, if at all?
So generally, it is believed that when USA announced its war on terror, initially it was very successful in the very initial stages, and Taliban was actually subdued and it retreated into Pakistan. This is where the role of Pakistan comes in, that it always saw Pakistan as a strategic reserve. So Taliban regrouped as well as it emerged stronger because of the shelter that Pakistan provided. Pakistan also provided with weapons as well as finances.
So, but in that case, the US would definitely have been anti-Pakistan, but we have been seeing several instances wherein US has always aided or helped Pakistan. So, if at all, Taliban is the enemy of the United States, and we see the notion that, as you said, that militants used to consider Pakistan as a safe haven, then it's pretty obvious that the US would also have been anti-Pakistan. But however, in this sense, we see that the US always has supported Pakistan both in terms of monetary aids and other support and every requirement. It was only just a couple of years back, since after rather killing of Osama bin Laden, we see a little bit of anti-Pakistani stance coming up. However, it's strictly, again, the US is not anti-Pakistan. So where is Pakistan in all of this?
Sir, actually, this is the major criticism of United States. This is why a lot of experts say that the US lost this war is because it never accepted the presence of Taliban in Pakistan, that it kept supporting Pakistan despite Pakistan's implicit support to terrorism. So this is true. Both these facts are true and they are inconsistent in themselves. And that is the major reason why USA lost the war in the first place. They kept supporting Pakistan on one hand. They never recognized the presence of Taliban in Pakistan, despite claiming to fight a war on terror.
Okay. Art, in let's delve away from the topic. Uh, in one of your previous answers, you mentioned that Indian farmers do not have crop insurance. Am I right? Said,
It's a lesser penetration of crop insurance.
okay. What is the reason behind that?
Sir, I may not know the exact reasons, but I think the probable reasons could be that they're not aware of different insurance schemes, or their experience with insurance schemes has been bad. So this was pointed out in case of Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, that the premium being paid was high, but when it actually came to covering up for the losses, the compensation was delayed a lot. They had to go through different layers of officials and bureaucracy, and this is why farmers actually stopped taking up the insurance.
Okay. So are you aware of the amount of premium that farmers pay when it comes to Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana?
Oh, sir, it's different from different crops. So it's 1.5% for Kharif crops, it's 2% for Rabi crops, and it's 5% for the horticultural crops, sir.
2% as in what of
Of
2%?
the total amount, sir.
Total amount. Okay. So the total amount is fixed on the basis of what?
Sir, I'm not sure how the exact amount is arrived at, sir.
Okay. So hypothetically, let's assume, let's assume that there's a certain sum insured for every hectare. Okay. For every hectare of crop, let's say paddy, there is a certain amount of money which is insured. What should we hire? The insurance sum assured should be higher, or the MSP which you're getting? I mean, hypothetically, imagine per hectare. You're aware of how large a hectare is?
Approximately, sir. I do not know the mathematical measurement.
Okay, it's pretty
yes, sir.
simple. It's a land of a size of 100 meters by 100 meters is essentially a hectare. Okay.
Yes, sir. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's 100 meters by 100 meters is a hectare. So per hectare, the sum insured should be higher, or per hectare, the whatever the farmer is will earn through MSP. Let's say whatever, let's say he's growing paddy, let's say he grows whatever amount. So whatever he's deriving by selling it to the government in the form of MSP, that should be higher, or the sum insured should be higher.
Sir, ideally, I would say that the MSP should be higher, because otherwise it can lead to malpractices, sir, that farmers may intentionally try to show that the crop yield has failed to take advantage of the insurance compensation, sir.
Okay, perfect. That was the answer that I was expecting. But then the catch in this situation is the sum insured is way higher than what you get through MSP. Why?
Sir, I'm not aware of the reasons.
Okay, okay, no worries. So Arth, now recently, just a couple of days back, we had a Supreme Court verdict wherein the 97th constitutional amendment was struck down as unconstitutional. Are you
Yes,
aware
sir.
of it?
Yes, sir. Sir, it struck down the certain provisions relating to cooperative societies. This comes in the backdrop that a separate Ministry of Cooperation has been created, sir.
Okay, so why was this 97th amendment struck down?
Sir, I'm forgetting the exact reason why this was struck down, sir.
Okay, so what are the changes that were made in our constitution by the 97th amendment, if at all you remember?
So there were three broad changes. One, a clause was inserted under Article 19, which made it a fundamental right to create a cooperative society. Two, a directive principle, I think Article 43B was added, which asked the state to promote cooperative societies. And third changes, the Part 9B was added, which dealt with the certain rules relating to cooperative societies.
Okay, so why was it deemed unconstitutional?
Sir, I will have to go through the judgment, sir.
Okay, okay. So Arth, being a mechanical engineer, are you interested in automobiles?
Sir, not so much, but I have read here and there about electric vehicles nowadays, sir.
Okay, so during your days of engineering, did you happen to read a little bit more about automobiles? Were there a couple of subjects that you had taken or something?
Sir, it wasn't a part of our core curriculum, sir. And I did not go out and read.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So when we're talking about electric vehicles, okay, so please help me understand the difference between a electric vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, and a conventional, internal combustion engine vehicle.
So first, I would differentiate between an electric vehicle and an IC engine vehicle. So the difference is basically in the engine. An electric vehicle uses a controller plus a motor, which is driven by electricity, while an IC engine is based on either spark ignition or compression ignition, and it uses fuel. It has reciprocating parts. Now we can differentiate either of these vehicles with the hybrid vehicle, in the sense that hybrid vehicles uses both electric driven system, electric driven engine, as well as the normal IC engine. How it does is certain hybrid vehicles, they use the electric control at lower speeds and the IC controls at the higher speeds, sir.
Okay. And so which is the thing that India and Indians should be looking at to have this transition? Currently, they say that electric vehicles are the future. So in that sense, what is better prospect for India? A hybrid vehicle or an electric vehicle, or let's say the conventional IC vehicle?
Sir, hybrid vehicle by its a very definition forms the transition between the conventional and the electric vehicles. In fact, we have the FAME scheme, which is promoting electric hybrid vehicles. However, now we are understanding that we can directly jump to electric vehicles as well. For example, Delhi government came up with a policy which is seeking to promote electric vehicles and not just hybrid vehicles. Unfortunately, there are a lot of constraints with electric vehicles, which might explain why we may have to go for hybrid vehicles first. So different constraints can be at the consumer end, a high price, a low range, as well as a low top speed, which is not the case with hybrid vehicles, sir. And at the production end, the extremely high weight, the materials needed for battery, like the lithium as well as nickel, and sir, the charging infrastructure. So these would be required on a much smaller scale for hybrid vehicles because they also have the IC engine, sir.
Okay. So when it comes to two-wheelers, why don't we have hybrid two-wheelers?
Sir, as far as I understand, the hybrid vehicles need to have both the engines inside, and that and secondly, sir, the mechanism that electric vehicle, the electric engine at the lower speed and the IC engine at the higher speed, that may not always be applicable for the two-wheeler, sir. Say a scooter, that is not applicable. So it's instead much more economical to have only electrical or only IC engines.
Okay. And okay, one last question from me, Arth. So are you aware that the Delhi government is constructing something called the Delhi Sports University?
So I'm not aware of the exact details, sir. I'll read about this.
Okay.